You're 3 months into retirement and you just realized you've spent $11,000 more than you planned. Not on anything crazy, just groceries, a few dinners out, helping your daughter with her car repair, replacing the deck furniture that finally gave out. You're sitting there with your bank statement, trying to figure out where the discipline went, that uneasy feeling creeping in. That's what we need to talk about today. Most retirement planning focuses on getting to retirement, how much you need saved, when to take Social Security, which accounts to tap first. But almost nobody talks about what actually goes wrong once you're there. The mistakes that don't show up in a spreadsheet but can quietly drain a retirement account over 20 years. My name is David Harrington. I spent over 2 decades as an investment banking analyst and portfolio strategist, navigating market cycles, recessions, and financial bubbles. After stepping away from institutional finance, I now focus on helping everyday people, especially those approaching or enjoying retirement, understand money in a calm, practical way. Before we continue, a quick note: this isn't financial advice. Everyone's situation is different. Think of this as education to help you ask better questions and make calmer decisions. By the end of this video, you'll understand the most common ways people sabotage their own retirement, not through bad luck or market crashes, but through quiet, everyday decisions that seem harmless in the moment. More importantly, you'll know what to watch for in your own behavior. If this kind of clear, practical retirement guidance is valuable to you, I'd appreciate if you'd subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. It helps me reach more people who need this information. Now let me start with the mistake I see most often, and it's not what you think. The first mistake is what I call lifestyle creep in reverse. You spent 40 years being told to save for retirement, delay gratification, put money away, don't touch the retirement accounts. Then suddenly you retire and you're supposed to flip a switch, start spending, enjoy yourself, you've earned it. Except that switch doesn't flip easily. What happens instead is fascinating. Some people, the ones who were really disciplined savers, they keep living like they're still saving. They've got $800,000 in retirement accounts, and they're still agonizing over whether to buy the $4 coffee or make it at home. They're watching their accounts grow, but they're not actually living the retirement they saved for. The other group does the opposite. They finally have permission to spend, and they overcorrect. Not wildly, nobody's buying Ferraris, but they start saying yes to things they used to say no to. Dinners out become 3 times a week instead of once. The vacation budget doubles because, hey, we're retired, we should travel while we can. Helping the grandkids becomes a monthly expense instead of occasional. Neither approach is wrong on its own. The mistake is not deciding consciously which one you're doing. You drift into patterns, and 3 years later, you look up and realize you've either spent way more than you planned, or you've denied yourself things that would have made retirement meaningful. Here's what I learned watching this happen to people. You need a spending plan that accounts for the emotional shift, not just a budget. That's a list of categories and dollar amounts. A spending plan that says, here are the things that matter to me in retirement, here's what they cost, here's how I'll know if I'm on track. For most people, that means tracking your first year of retirement obsessively. Not forever, just the first 12 months. Write down what you actually spend, not what you think you should spend. At the end of that year, you'll know your real number. Then you can decide if that's sustainable or if something needs to adjust. Which brings me to the second mistake, and this one costs people tens of thousands of dollars they never see coming. Most retirees drastically underestimate their healthcare costs, not Medicare premiums. Everyone knows those are coming. I'm talking about the stuff Medicare doesn't cover: dental work, vision, hearing aids, the medications that aren't on the formulary, the specialists with the high copays, the sudden need for a knee replacement or cataract surgery. I watched a couple in their first year of retirement spend $14,000 out of pocket on healthcare. They'd budgeted $6,000. The wife needed dental implants, not cosmetic, necessary because of bone loss. Medicare doesn't touch that. The husband's doctor prescribed a newer medication that wasn't covered by Part D. $400 a month. They weren't doing anything wrong. Their bodies just aged right on schedule, and insurance didn't cover everything that aging required. Here's the thing about healthcare costs in retirement. They don't stay steady. They escalate. Your 60s are usually manageable. Your 70s start getting expensive. Your 80s can be brutal if you're not prepared. The average couple retiring today will spend something like $315,000 on healthcare over their retirement. That's not including long-term care. That's just regular medical expenses. Most people haven't internalized that number. They're thinking maybe $100,000 total, and they're off by over $200,000. What I tell people is this: take whatever you think you'll spend on healthcare and add 50%. If you budgeted $8,000 a year, plan for $12,000. If you budgeted $12,000, plan for $18,000. You might not spend it all, but if you do need it, you won't be forced into bad decisions because the money isn't there. Now here's where it gets tricky, and this is the third major mistake. People don't adjust their investment strategy for retirement. They spent 30 years in accumulation mode, stocks, growth, taking some risk because time was on their side. Then they retire, and they leave everything exactly the same. Same allocation, same risk level, same investment philosophy. That's a problem because the math changes completely once you start taking withdrawals. When you're accumulating, market drops don't matter that much. You're buying the whole way down. But when you're in retirement and taking money out, the sequence of returns matters enormously. If you retire and the market drops 20% in year 2 and you're pulling out $40,000 to live on, you just locked in losses you can never recover. You sold low because you had to. That's what we call sequence of returns risk, and it's the silent killer of retirement plans. Most people don't think about this until it happens to them. They retire in 2007, the market crashes in 2008, they're pulling money out the whole way down, and by 2010, they've realized their retirement account isn't going to last as long as they thought. The solution isn't to get out of the market entirely. That creates a different problem. Inflation slowly eroding your purchasing power. The solution is to have multiple buckets. Cash for the next year or 2 of expenses, bonds or stable investments for years 3 through 7, stocks for everything beyond that. This way, when the market drops, you're not selling stocks at a loss. You're living off your cash bucket and letting your stock investments recover. It's not complicated, but it requires intentional planning that most people skip, which connects directly to the fourth mistake, and this one is purely psychological. Retirees make emotional decisions at exactly the wrong time. The market drops 15% and they panic and sell. Or the market's been going up for 2 years and they get greedy and buy something risky they don't understand. I saw this constantly during my Wall Street years. Regular investors doing the opposite of what made sense at the exact moment it made the least sense. Not because they were stupid, because they were scared or excited. And both emotions are terrible for financial decision making. Here's what happens. You're 72 years old. You've got $600,000 in your retirement account. The market drops and suddenly you're at $510,000. You can feel your security evaporating. Your advisor says stay the course, but every day you log in and the number's lower. Eventually you can't take it anymore and you sell. Move everything to cash. Now you're safe, right? Except what you actually did was lock in a 15% loss. You sold low. Then 6 months later, the market recovers and you're sitting in cash watching everyone else's accounts go back up. So you buy back in, but now you're buying high. You just executed the worst possible strategy at the worst possible time. The flip side is equally dangerous. The market's been great for 3 years. Your neighbor tells you about some investment that's been crushing it. You've got FOMO. You move $50,000 into something you barely understand because you don't want to miss out. Both mistakes come from the same place. Making permanent decisions based on temporary emotions. The solution is to have rules you follow regardless of how you feel. When the market drops more than 10%, I do nothing for 30 days. When I hear about a hot investment opportunity, I wait 90 days before acting. When I feel panic or greed, I talk to someone before I make changes. Remove your emotions from the equation by removing your ability to act impulsively. Now let me talk about the fifth mistake, and this one breaks my heart because it's driven by love. People financially enable their adult children and it destroys their own retirement security. I'm not talking about helping with an emergency. I'm talking about ongoing financial support that becomes a structural part of your retirement spending. Your daughter's going through a divorce and needs help with rent. Your son's business isn't taking off yet, and he needs money to make payroll. Your grandkids need help with college. Every individual request makes perfect sense. You want to help. You have the money. What kind of parent says no? But here's what I've seen happen. That temporary help becomes permanent. The daughter never quite gets back on her feet. The son's business never becomes profitable. The college help extends to graduate school and then to a down payment on a house. 5 years into retirement, you've given away $80,000 and your retirement projection just went from comfortable to concerning. But you can't stop now because they're depending on it. You've trained them to depend on it. I'm not saying don't help your kids. I'm saying decide in advance what help looks like. Is it a gift or a loan? Is it one time or ongoing? What's the maximum you'll provide without jeopardizing your own security? Because here's the hard truth. If you run out of money in your 80s, your kids are going to have to support you. And that's going to be much harder on them than whatever problem they're facing today. You're not helping them by depleting your own safety net. You're just transferring the problem forward in time and making it bigger. The most loving thing you can do is maintain your own financial independence so you're never a burden. Help where you can, but keep your oxygen mask on first. This connects to the sixth mistake, and it's about something most people don't want to think about. Retirees dramatically underestimate how long they're going to live. I see people plan for retirement lasting until 85, maybe 90 if they're being conservative. Then they hit 85 in great health and realize they might have another 15 years ahead of them, but they've only got 10 years of money left. Longevity risk is the polite term for it, the risk of outliving your money. And it's getting worse because people are living longer. A healthy 65-year-old today has a pretty good chance of making it to 95. If you're married, there's a strong probability one of you makes it past 100. Nobody wants to plan for living to 100 because it feels like you're being ridiculously conservative. But you know what's worse than being conservative? Being 92 years old and realizing you're out of money with potentially a decade still to go. The mistake is planning for average life expectancy instead of planning for the possibility you'll be in the 25% who live much longer. That means your money needs to last not 30 years, but 40 years. Which means either you need more saved or you need to spend less, or you need to be more aggressive with guaranteed income sources like annuities or delaying Social Security. Most people don't want to hear this because it means either working longer or living on less, but the alternative is catastrophic. Now here's the seventh mistake, and this one is about timing. People claim Social Security at the wrong time for their situation. Not wrong in some universal sense, wrong for their specific circumstances. The math on Social Security is pretty straightforward. You can claim as early as 62, but your benefit is reduced permanently. If you wait until your full retirement age, 67 for most people, you get your full benefit. If you wait until 70, your benefit increases by 8% every year you delay. So people hear that and they think, obviously I should wait until 70 and get the maximum. Or they think, I'm going to die early. I better take it at 62 before I lose it all. Both approaches ignore your actual situation. If you're 62 and you lost your job and you have no other income, taking Social Security early might be exactly right, even though it reduces your benefit. Because the alternative is draining your retirement accounts, and that might cost you more in the long run. On the flip side, if you're 67 and still working and making good money, taking Social Security now means you're paying taxes on it while you don't even need it. You'd be better off letting it grow. And if you're married, the calculation gets even more complex. Because when one spouse dies, the surviving spouse keeps the higher of the two benefits. So if you're the higher earner, delaying your benefit isn't just about you. It's about protecting your spouse potentially for decades after you're gone. The mistake is making the Social Security decision in isolation instead of as part of your overall retirement plan. When should you claim? It depends on your health, your other income sources, your tax situation, your longevity expectations, your spouse's situation. There's no one-size-fits-all answer. Let me talk about the eighth mistake now, and this one is about housing. People stay in houses they can't afford in retirement, not can't afford the mortgage. Most retirees have paid off their mortgage, can't afford the property taxes, the insurance, the maintenance, the utilities, the upkeep. You're living in a 4-bedroom house you raised your kids in. It's worth $450,000. Your property taxes are $8,000 a year and climbing. The insurance is $2,500. You had to replace the roof last year for $15,000. The HVAC is 20 years old and you're praying it lasts another few years because that's another $8,000. You're spending $25,000 a year just to maintain a house that's way bigger than you need, in a location you chose based on school districts that don't matter anymore. Meanwhile, you could downsize to a condo or a smaller house, cut your housing costs in half, pull out $200,000 in equity to pad your retirement accounts, and eliminate all the maintenance headaches. But you don't, because this is your home. Your memories are here. Your kids grew up here. The thought of leaving feels like giving up something irreplaceable. I understand that emotion, I really do. But here's the question, is staying in this house worth working part-time into your 70s because you need the extra income? Is it worth not traveling because you can't afford it after paying the property taxes? Is it worth the stress of wondering if you can handle the next big repair? Sometimes the answer is yes. The house is worth it. But most people never actually ask the question. They just stay by default and then resent the financial burden it creates. The smart move is to at least run the numbers. What would your life look like financially if you downsized? How much would you free up monthly? What could that money do for your retirement quality of life? Then make an informed choice instead of drifting into financial stress. Now here's the ninth mistake, and this one is about protection. Retirees don't plan for long-term care until it's too late. Most people think Medicare covers nursing homes or assisted living. It doesn't. Medicare covers skilled nursing for short rehab stays after a hospital visit. It doesn't cover custodial care, someone helping you bathe, dress, eat, take your medications. The average cost of a nursing home is something like $8,000 to $10,000 a month. Assisted living is $4,000 to $6,000. Memory care is even more. If you need care for 3 years, you're looking at $200,000 to $350,000 out of pocket. Most people's retirement savings can't absorb that hit. So what happens? They spend down their assets until they qualify for Medicaid, which means everything they saved their whole life gets consumed by care costs, and there's nothing left for their spouse or their kids. The mistake is thinking this won't happen to you. Statistically, about 70% of people over 65 will need some form of long-term care. Maybe just for a few months, maybe for years. You don't know. There are basically 3 ways to handle this. 1, you self-insure. You save enough that you can pay for care if needed and still have money left over. That requires probably $500,000 above and beyond your regular retirement needs. Most people don't have that. 2, you buy long-term care insurance in your 50s or early 60s when it's still affordable. It's expensive, but it caps your risk. The premiums buy you a defined benefit that protects your other assets. 3, you do nothing and hope for the best. If you need care, you spend down to Medicaid qualification. You lose control over where you live and what kind of care you get, but at least you're not on the street. Most people choose option 3 by default because they don't want to think about it. And then they're shocked when it happens, and there are no good options left. I'm not telling you which approach to take. I'm telling you that not choosing is choosing, and it's usually the worst choice. Let me talk about the 10th and final mistake, and this one ties everything together. People retire without a clear sense of purpose, and it affects every financial decision they make. Retirement isn't just a financial transition, it's a psychological one. You go from structured days and clear identity to unlimited time and no defined role. Some people love it. They've been waiting their whole lives to have this freedom. But a lot of people discover that work gave them more than just a paycheck. It gave them purpose, structure, social connection, identity. When that disappears, people make financial mistakes trying to fill the void. They spend money they don't have on hobbies they lose interest in. They overcommit to expensive activities because they're trying to prove retirement is everything they hoped. They make big financial decisions, buying an RV, moving to a retirement community, starting a business, because they're searching for meaning. Here's what I learned. The people who have the most successful retirements financially are the ones who figured out the purpose question before the money question. They know what they're retiring to, not just what they're retiring from. Maybe it's volunteering, maybe it's grandkids, maybe it's travel or hobbies or learning new things. Maybe it's part-time work doing something they actually enjoy. It doesn't matter what it is. What matters is they have a reason to get up in the morning that isn't just because I'm supposed to enjoy retirement. When you have that clarity, the financial decisions get easier. You know what's worth spending money on because you know what matters to you. You're not spending to fill emptiness. You're spending to support a life you actually want to live. Without that clarity, you drift financially the same way you drift psychologically, and drifting is expensive. So here's where we end up. These 10 mistakes: spending without intention, underestimating healthcare costs, keeping the wrong investment strategy, making emotional decisions, enabling adult children, underestimating longevity, mistiming Social Security, staying in expensive houses, ignoring long-term care, retiring without purpose. None of them are dramatic. Nobody loses everything overnight because of these mistakes. But they compound quietly over 20 or 30 years. And by the time you realize what happened, you can't undo it. You're 85 years old and your options are limited, and you can't go back and make different choices at 65. The good news is all of these are preventable. They're not about market crashes or bad luck. They're about awareness and intentional decision-making. You have control here. If you're not yet retired, use this as a planning checklist. Which of these are you vulnerable to? What can you put in place now to avoid them later? If you're already retired, use this as a review. Which of these have you already fallen into? What can you adjust going forward? Your future self is counting on you to make clear-headed decisions now. Not perfect decisions, clear-headed ones. Decisions that account for reality instead of wishful thinking. Decisions that protect your security while still letting you enjoy the retirement you worked for. You've got one shot at this. Make it count.